What if the thing we thought was faith was really just hatred in disguise? That's the question that hit me the day he died, and it hasn't let me go since. You see, people like to think hatred and belief are two separate things. That conviction comes from a place of love, while hatred belongs to another camp altogether. But I saw what happens when people take ideology, whether political, religious, social, and strip out love until all that's left is rage. It doesn't look like ideology anymore. It doesn't even look like conviction. It looks like violence waiting for a spark. And when that spark came for him, hatred showed its true face, and the man I once prayed with, laughed with, and called brother was gone in an instant. He wasn't naive. He knew the tension in the air. He could feel the hostility building in the way people spoke, the way conversations turned sharp, the way social media threads became battlegrounds instead of discussions. He told me once, if love isn't fueling your belief, it's not faith anymore. It's just war painted holy. I nodded, half understanding, but I didn't grasp the urgency of it until the night hatred turned its aim on him. It didn't start with the bullet. That's what everyone misses when they hear the story. It started years earlier in whispered conversations, in sarcasm, in resentment that festered and hardened. Hatred doesn't burst onto the scene out of nowhere. It grows like mold in silence, slowly, until one day you realize the walls are covered in it, and that's what I saw happening around him. People began twisting words, twisting truth, twisting belief itself, until it no longer resembled Jesus at all. They claimed righteousness, but their tone dripped with contempt. They claimed conviction, but their eyes burned with pride. And when ideology loses Jesus, it doesn't matter what side it's on, it becomes a weapon. The night he died, I remember sitting at my table, staring at my phone, reading the news with disbelief. Local man killed after confrontation. They made it sound like it was some sudden fight, like tempers just flared. But I knew better. I knew this wasn't about a fight, it was about years of hatred boiling over. I sat there shaking, whispering, Lord, how did we get here? And in that silence, I heard Jesus whisper something that shook me to my core. This is what happens when people use my name but forget my love. I couldn't stop replaying our last conversation. He had been talking about how divided everything felt. Families torn apart, friendships ended, churches split, all over ideology. He sighed and said, if we're not careful, we'll start killing each other, not because of what we believe, but because of what we hate. I brushed it off. Come on, people argue, but it won't get that far. He just looked at me, his face heavy, and said, hate always wants blood, always. When he said it, I thought it was just a dramatic line. Now I realize it was prophecy. Because hate doesn't stay contained in debates or comments or slogans. It's like fire, it spreads, it consumes, and eventually it destroys. And the scariest part, it convinces people they're being righteous while doing it. That's how ideology, stripped of love, becomes deadly. In the days after, I struggled with anger like I never had before. Anger at the ones who killed him, anger at the system that let hatred fester, anger at myself for not taking his words seriously. And I wanted to fight back in the same way. Words sharp as knives, arguments like fists, anything to make them feel the pain I felt. But every time I opened my mouth, I heard Jesus stop me. The anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. That verse clung to me like a chain and a lifeline at the same time. Because part of me wanted to break it, to lash out. But part of me knew he was right. If I let hatred become my response to hatred, then I was proving the very thing that killed him. That ideology without love is just hatred disguised. And I couldn't let his death push me into the same trap. Still, the pull was strong. I'd scroll through posts and see people arguing, not mourning. I'd hear conversations that twisted his story to fit agendas, to score points, to push divisions further. And I wanted to scream, he was a man, not your debate weapon. But again, Jesus pulled me back. In prayer one night, I cried out, what am I supposed to do with this pain? And he answered, bear witness, not to hatred, to love. Show them what he stood for, not what killed him. That's when I began to see things differently. His death wasn't just tragedy, it was revelation. It pulled back the curtain on how fragile we are when we let hatred run unchecked. how quickly conviction can rot when love is absent. And it forced me to ask myself, what is my faith built on? Is it built on winning arguments, proving myself right, tearing others down? Or is it built on the love that Jesus showed when he let himself be crucified, rather than pick up a sword? That question cut me open. Because I realized how often I had fed into the same spirit I claimed to oppose, how often I had spoken truth without love, how often I had leaned on ideology more than intimacy with Jesus. And I knew then that if we didn't change, then his death would just be the first of many. In the weeks after, people asked me, "Do you think he died for his beliefs?" And my answer, heavy in my chest, was always, no, he didn't die for his beliefs. He died because people replaced belief with hatred. And that distinction matters, because belief rooted in Jesus leads to love, to sacrifice, to peace. Hatred disguised as belief leads to bullets. That's what I carry now. Not just grief, not just memories, but the burden of telling this truth even when people don't want to hear it. Because it's easier to paint him as a martyr, easier to make speeches about freedom of belief, than it is to face the uncomfortable reality that hatred had been growing among us, and we didn't stop it. And Jesus keeps reminding me, this isn't new. The Pharisees believed they were protecting truth when they shouted for his crucifixion. Saul believed he was protecting God's law when he hunted Christians. Hatred has always worn the mask of ideology. The only thing that unmasks it is love, real love, sacrificial love, the kind that risks comfort, risks reputation, risks even life itself. I'm not there yet. I'm still learning. I still wrestle with anger, still feel fear every time I speak up. But I know now that if I let hatred dictate my actions, I'm no better than the ones who killed him. And if I let silence dictate my actions, then his death echoes in vain. The only path forward is the Nene one, speaking truth wrapped in love, even when it costs me, especially when it costs me. That's where I'll pause for now. Because the second part of this story isn't just about his death or my grief. It's about what happened when the threats turned toward me, when I had to choose whether to keep speaking, and when Jesus showed me that love isn't weak in the face of hatred. It's the only thing strong enough to break it. When I left off, I told you about how he died, how hatred disguised as belief swallowed up truth and left only violence behind. That was the shock. The moment the world tilted on its axis and left me reeling. But what I haven't told you yet is what came after, when the storm turned its eyes toward me, and when Jesus began to show me, step by painful step, that love is not weakness in the face of hatred. It's the only force strong enough to outlast it. The days after his funeral felt like walking through smoke. Everything was hazy, thick, hard to breathe. People said all the predictable things. He's in a better place. He died for what he believed. Time will heal. But those words sounded like paper in my ears, too thin to hold the weight of what had happened. I'd lie in bed at night, replaying the last conversation we had, hearing his warning, if love isn't fueling your belief, it's just war painted holy. And now his absence gave those words a haunting clarity. I noticed quickly how people shifted after he was gone. Some grew quieter, afraid to say anything that might draw attention. Others grew louder, angrier, pushing ideology harder, as if doubling down would make his death meaningful. And then there were the whispers around me. People who knew I was close to him began asking questions with their eyes. Are you going to keep speaking like him? Are you going to draw fire too? At first, I thought the danger had passed with his death, but it didn't take long before the threats started reaching me. Anonymous notes slipped under my door, emails with lines like, "You saw what happened to him, don't be stupid." Once, at a grocery store, a man brushed past me and muttered under his breath, "Keep running your mouth and you'll join him." I froze there by the cereal aisle, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. I grabbed what I came for and left without looking anyone in the eye. That night, sitting alone at my table, fear seeped into me like poison. I wanted to quit. I wanted to disappear. I thought about deleting every post, about never speaking in public again. I thought about my kids, about whether it was fair to put them at risk. And in that fear, I prayed what might have been the most honest prayer of my life. Lord, I don't want to be brave. I don't want to die for this. Please tell me it's okay to stay silent. And in that moment, Jesus met me, not with condemnation, but with truth. His words came to me like a whisper in my bones. If your belief never costs you anything, it isn't belief, it's convenience. But I have not left you. My perfect love drives out fear. I wept until I couldn't breathe, because I knew then that silence wasn't safety. It was surrender. And surrendering to hatred is the one thing I couldn't do. Not if I truly claimed to follow him. The next test came sooner than I wanted. At church, they asked me to speak about him, to honor his memory. I stood there at the pulpit, looking out at familiar faces. I knew what they wanted: comfort, reassurance, words that would soothe. But comfort wasn't his legacy, love was. So I said with my hands trembling, he didn't die for belief. He died because hatred took the place of belief. And if we don't let love root our convictions, we will all keep digging the same graves. You could feel the air shift. Some nodded, tears in their eyes. Others stiffened, arms crossed, already deciding I'd gone too far. Afterward, someone pulled me aside and whispered, "Be careful. That kind of talk will get you killed." That night, lying awake, I realized something. When ideology is replaced by hatred, the community divides not just in ideas, but in courage. Some retreat, some attack. But a small remnant begins to really see, that love isn't optional, it's survival. And I knew I wanted to be part of that remnant. I began gathering with a few others who had been close to him. At first, we just mourned, but slowly, our mourning turned into prayer, and our prayer turned into resolve. We realized his death wasn't just a loss. It was a warning, and also a calling to stop hiding, stop pretending, stop letting hatred set the terms. We weren't many, a handful at most, but Jesus kept reminding me, do not despise small beginnings. Still, the fear lingered. Every knock at the door made me jump. Every car slowing near my house made my chest tighten. Some nights I lay awake, listening to the creaks of the house, convinced someone was coming. And in those moments, I clung to the cross like a lifeline, because Jesus knew this fear. He had walked into Jerusalem, knowing hatred was waiting. He had warned his disciples again and again that he would be killed. But they didn't believe until the nails were hammered in. And when I remembered that, I realized I was no different. I hadn't believed until I saw the blood myself. But Jesus didn't abandon his disciples for their disbelief. He restored them, he breathed his spirit into them, and he used their fear as the soil where courage would grow. That's what he was doing in me. Every time I wanted to quit, he whispered, "I am with you." And slowly, that whisper became louder than the threats. One night, during one of our small gatherings, I shared what Jesus had been showing me. I said, if we let hatred define us, we lose. If we let fear define us, we lose. The only way forward is love. The kind of love that isn't sentimental, but sacrificial. The kind that risks comfort, risks safety, risks even life. Because Jesus showed us that resurrection is stronger than death. There was silence for a moment. Then one woman, tears on her cheeks, said, "That's why I came tonight. I needed to hear that it's still worth it." And in that moment, I saw how his death wasn't wasted. It was multiplying. I won't lie and tell you it's gotten easier. The threats haven't gone away. The fear hasn't vanished. Some days I still wonder if I'll end up like him. But I've learned that the question isn't, will I be safe? The question is, will I be faithful? And faithfulness, I've discovered, means refusing to let hatred masquerade as belief. It means pointing people back to love, again and again, even when they roll their eyes, even when they sneer, even when they threaten. That's what Jesus showed me through his death, that the greatest danger isn't bullets or threats. The greatest danger is when ideology, stripped of love, convinces us we're righteous, while we destroy each other. But the greatest hope, that love, real love, is still stronger. Stronger than fear, stronger than hatred, stronger than death. So now, when people ask me if I'm afraid, I tell them the truth. Yes, I'm afraid. But then I add, Fear doesn't get the final word. Jesus does. And his word is love. Always love. That's my testimony. That's the story I carry. Not just of his death, but of the Jesus who met me in the aftermath and showed me that ideology without love is just hatred, dressed up, and that only love can dismantle it. He died, but through his death, I've learned to live differently, and I pray I never forget that lesson.